Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going off the beaten path, looking beyond the headlines, straight into the collective consciousness, actually.
We're investigating an event that, well, for a few hours brought a really profound silence, a kind of standstill to a big chunk of Western Europe.
Exactly. Our mission today is a deep dive into that massive blackout, the one that hit Spain, Portugal, and southern France back on April 28, 2025.
And the sources for this, well, they're unique. We're drawing from multiple independent investigative hypnosis sessions, all focused just on this one event, this one area.
So not your usual government reports or news articles.
Not at all. We're looking at the patterns, the common threads that emerged when people explored this event under hypnosis. It gives us this incredible tapestry, synthesizing a kind of consensus narrative.
Okay.
And it offers us remarkable insights into how this event was perceived, both on the physical level, the infrastructure, and on these deeper metaphysical planes, things usually hidden from view.
That's the crucial part, isn't it? So for you listening, what we're doing here is pulling out those clear consensus points, the story that multiple sources agreed on. But we're also bringing you the really vivid, specific stories, those individual experiences that honestly go way beyond just data points.
Yeah.
They bring it all to life.
Yeah, the human element.
Exactly. We're exploring a crisis that, for some people, actually turned out to be a kind of spiritual breakthrough. Sounds strange, but that's what the data suggests.
Right. So let's start at the basics, the physical reality. There was a sudden power outage, very localized, relatively speaking, but devastating for the Iberian Peninsula and southern France.
And the official story was?
Oh, vague. Technical difficulties, grid instability, the usual lines.
Yeah.
But our sources, these hypnosis sessions, they offer accounts that are, well, way more complex. It wasn't just seen as simple equipment failure.
Okay, so let's unpack those perceived physical causes, because they seem quite varied, right?
They really are. On one hand, you have Nellie's session. She describes something very precise, almost surgical, an explicit electrical impulse or maybe interference.
Like a deliberate pulse.
Yeah, almost like a targeted EMP, but designed specifically just to disconnect systems, not necessarily to blow things up, but to cleanly take them offline. Sounds very technical, very professional.
Okay, a surgical strike. But that wasn't the only view, was it?
No, not at all. That precise interference seemed to coexist with more dramatic, hands-on narratives. Clarice, for instance, perceived a specific physical action, someone actually doing something underground.
Doing what?
She saw someone actively tampering with a generator. The word used in the session was bidouang, like fiddling with it, manipulating it.
Fiddling with a major power generator.
Apparently so. She even detailed it further, someone hitting an emergency override button. And this was happening in a huge, high-tech underground hangar, possibly near an airport. Very specific details.
Wow. Okay, that's specific. And then there's the really startling part of her account, the identity of the person doing the tampering.
Yes. And I know this is a huge leap from electrical impulse, but Clarice clearly identified the individual hitting that button underground as a reptiloid entity.
A reptiloid physically interacting with human technology in a secret hangar. How was that perceived? Was it like a direct visual or more symbolic?
According to the session notes, it was a clear visual confirmation, an immediate recognition of this non-human entity taking direct physical action to sabotage the system.
It's quite a contrast to Nellie's clean impulse.
It absolutely is. But it adds this layer of deliberate, almost personalized intervention. And then you have Jeremy's perspective, which was more systemic.
How so?
He described the whole energy system itself acting strangely before the blackout, experiencing unusual oscillation, movement, like an energy not having a usual rhythm.
Suggesting it was destabilized first.
Exactly. Thrown into chaos, deliberately unbalanced before the final disconnection, sort of primed for failure.
So we've got external interference, internal sabotage by a non-human, and systemic destabilization. Anything else on the physical cause?
Visha offered one more technical view, seeing a massive overloading, like a sudden, overwhelming excess of waves hitting the grid.
Okay, so different mechanisms, impulse, tampering, destabilization, overload, but the common thread seems to be a deliberate, almost violent action against the power system.
Precisely. Whether it was too much energy or a targeted cut, it wasn't seen as accidental. Now here's maybe the most technically fascinating part about the physical scene, where the power actually went.
What do you mean it went out?
Well, yes and no. Jeremy perceived the electricity as still being available, just not going where it was supposed to.
How?
He saw the energy that should have been powering Spain, Portugal, southern France actually contouring or passing around those territories.
Passing around them, flowing elsewhere.
Yes, via these structured pathways he described as electric filaments.
Electric filaments. We're talking about immense amounts of power here. Enough for half a continent. Are these filaments like a metaphor? Or did he perceive some kind of actual energetic technology diverting the power?
The perception was definitely one of an energetic technology. This wasn't just power lost because a line went down. It was actively, directly deviated.
Diverted, like redirecting a river.
Exactly like that. Imagine a controlled gate system, but for massive energy flows. The power stream was intentionally rerouted, guided away from its intended recipients towards another territory or destination entirely, which suggests, a level of control and precision over the grid far beyond what we normally think of as human capability.
So the energy wasn't just lost, it was effectively stolen, redirected using some kind of advanced tech.
That was the perception. Stolen and sent somewhere else. Hashtag 1.2, the esoteric cause, the vessel in the test.
Okay, if the power was deliberately diverted using these filaments, the massive question is why? Where did it go? And what was the point of plunging these huge regions into darkness?
Right. And this is where we shift from the physical mechanics to the strategic purpose. And the sources were remarkably unanimous on this. It was part of a calculated effort universally described as a test.
A test? Of what?
We'll get to that. But first, where the energy went gives us a big clue. Jeremy saw this diverted power feeding something specific, an imposing high-tech structure. He called it a massive vessel.
A vessel, like a ship, in space, underground.
The location wasn't always clear, but the description was consistent. Huge, technological, advanced. And Clarisse corroborated seeing this vessel, too. Critically, she noted it was commanded by humanoids.
Humanoids, interesting. So we have reptiloids potentially doing the sabotage on the ground, and humanoids commanding the vessel receiving the diverted power.
That's the hierarchy suggested, yes. It implies a coordinated effort, with different non-human groups playing specific roles. The humanoids seem to be utilizing the power, potentially stolen or facilitated by the reptiloid draconian factions, for their own strategic goals linked to this vessel.
And what was the vessel doing? Just soaking up raw power. Seems a bit crude for such advanced tech.
It was apparently much more specific than that. Jeremy observed its purpose was multi-layered. Yes, it needed power, but its primary function seemed to be collecting specific electromagnetic waves related to the electric grid itself.
Collecting waves, like data signatures.
That's the strong implication. Like, they weren't just stealing the juice, they were harvesting the energetic signature of the controlled power system, especially perhaps as it was collapsing or being manipulated.
So maybe mapping vulnerabilities. Or collecting residual frequencies, like the background noise or programming embedded in the grid's operation.
That's certainly what it sounds like. Capturing the data and the frequency signatures generated by the system under stress, all happening under the umbrella of this event being a test, which both Clarisse and Nellie mentioned.
Okay, so not a random outage, not just sabotage, but a planned operation, a test run.
Exactly. The sessions really confirmed this wasn't some isolated incident. It was seen as part of a much larger global strategy, a dry run, perhaps, to gauge reactions, test the tech, measure the effectiveness, check the logistics.
And the range of entities involved suggests the scale, right? You mentioned humanoids and reptiloids.
Yeah.
Were others involved?
Yes, the sessions implicated a wider coalition. Miriam and Lily's sessions were key here, providing details on the hierarchy. The overall cause was attributed to this planned geopolitical and energetic manipulation orchestrated by several non-human groups, including insectoids, reptiloids, humanoids, and even draconians.
A full house. And do they have distinct roles?
It appeared so. The Draconians and Reptiloids were often perceived as being behind the more aggressive or disruptive actions like the sabotage Clarisse saw, or maybe Nellie's electrical impulse. The architects of the chaos, perhaps.
Okay.
While the humanoids seemed positioned more as the strategic commanders operating that high-tech vessel, maybe directing the overall mission.
And the insectoids.
They were often seen in a facilitating role, perhaps involved in implementing the control structures or the technological aspects on a different level. It really suggests a kind of military-style alliance, wouldn't you say?
It does. Each group playing a specific part in this multi-front strategy aimed at, what? Controlling energy, geopolitics.
Both, it seems. Aimed at controlling human consciousness itself, using energetic manipulation and physical disruption of our systems.
So if you connect that back, The precision of diverting the power suddenly makes more sense. It wasn't just about causing a blackout.
Exactly. It was targeted to fuel this specific vessel and its mission while simultaneously creating the necessary chaos and fear on the ground to enable, well, the next phase of their operation. And that chaos, that human response, was immediate. You pull the plug on essential services, plunge millions into darkness. The psychological and, crucially, the energetic result is massive.
Fear.
Overwhelmingly. The sources were absolutely unanimous on this. The immediate consequence was the generation of a colossal egregore of fear.
Okay, let's just quickly define that for everyone. An egregore, it's like a collective thought form, right?
Yeah.
A massive pool of shared energy created by the thoughts and especially the emotions of a large group.
Precisely. In this case, a huge wave of shared panic, confusion, anxiety. And Jeremy Session noted this was absolutely not accidental. It wasn't just a side effect. It was a primary strategic goal, harvesting this fear.
Deliberately engineered fear.
Yes. Designed, apparently, to resonate with and amplify past collective traumas. Think about the fear around pandemics, economic collapse, the constant threat of war. This event tapped right into that reservoir.
To what end? Why harvest fear?
Well, the sheer volume of this low-frequency energy was intended, according to Jeremy, to feed the entity's ethereal plan, whatever that fully entails. But essentially, it enables mass energetic interference. It makes the population more susceptible to control.
How does that feeding mechanism actually work, according to sources? Does the fear literally power their technology, like the vessel? Or does it just lower our defenses?
It seems to do both, actually. That low vibrational frequency of widespread fear acts like an open door. It weakens the natural protective energetic field of individuals and the collective.
Making infiltration easier.
Much easier. Their subliminal programming, their interference attempts become far more effective when people are vibrating in fear. And the raw energy itself, that kinetic trauma of panic. Yeah, the sources suggest it is literally harvested, used as fuel for their ongoing operations, possibly even helping power the vessel itself.
And we saw the results on the ground, didn't we? The sessions described the immediate impact.
Oh, absolutely. Clarice saw the classic panic-induced behaviors, people running like headless chickens, she said. Complete confusion.
And hoarding.
Immediate hoarding, yeah, overbuying food supplies. But also, critically, she observed a rapid spike in what she termed malicious behavior.
Malicious. Like looting.
That, but also more insidious things related to exploiting the chaos financially. Banking fraud, insurance scams popping up almost instantly, people trying to capitalize on the sudden disruption.
So the blackout didn't just turn off the lights. For some, it seemed to turn off their ethical compass, too.
It seems the low-frequency environment it created was fertile ground not just for panic, but for opportunistic, lower-level actions, which, of course, perfectly fulfilled the goal of sowing maximum disorder.
A bleak picture.
Yeah.
But you mentioned there were counter-narratives, stories that challenge this inevitability of fear.
Yes, and this is where it gets really fascinating. Powerful counter-narratives emerged that completely flipped the script on that collective fear response. Hashtag 2.2, the joyful counter-narrative, Linda's story.
This sounds like one of the most remarkable findings. A blueprint for resilience, maybe? Tell us about Linda.
Okay, so Nellie Session recounted this specific, quite incredible story of a woman named Linda, and she was located right in Castilla, Spain. I mean, geographically right in the heart of the blackout zone.
Okay, ground zero, essentially. So she must have been terrified.
That's what you'd expect, right? But no, Linda's experience was described as a complete energetic anomaly. She was apparently full of vibrant joy, vitality, completely, totally unaffected by the event unfolding around her.
Unaffected? How? She didn't notice the power was out.
Get this, she was entirely unaware of the blackout while it was actually happening. She only learned about it afterwards, from others.
Wait, how is that even possible? If the lights are out, the phones are dead. How does someone in the middle of it just not notice?
Well, her lack of impact was attributed directly to her internal state, her high internal frequency and her profound energetic stability.
High frequency, like her mood, her thoughts.
Her overall state of being. The key takeaway from her session, and this is crucial, is that the impact wasn't about luck or where you lived. It was a matter of resonance.
Resonance, meaning?
Meaning if you yourself are vibrating at a frequency of, say, joy, stability, inner peace, you literally do not resonate with or even perceive events that are operating on a low frequency of chaos and fear. It's like they're on a different radio station.
That completely reframes everything. It suggests that maintaining a certain internal state acts like an energetic shield. Or maybe makes you invisible to the disruption.
That's certainly the implication, like an energetic cloak, as you say. If your own frequency is sufficiently high and stable, the low-frequency attack simply doesn't register. It can't latch on.
Do we know what Linda was doing? How did she maintain that stability during a massive crisis? Was she meditating or...
The sources didn't detail specific activities like she was doing yoga. It focused more on her state of being, this deep sense of internal peace, sovereignty, connection to her own inner source.
So it implies that if your connection to your inner power, your inner light, is strong enough, then your dependence on the external grid or your susceptibility to the collective fear just evaporates.
That seems to be the message. Only those who resonated with the low frequencies of the panic were actually impacted, or even really noticed the disturbance in a disruptive way. For Linda, effectively, the power never went out.
Because her source of light was internal.
Exactly. Hashtag 2.3, the glitch and the mental reset, Lily's story. So Linda's story shows a kind of immunity through high frequency. But Lily's story shows something else. An almost instantaneous correction or reset when the external interference stopped.
Okay, tell us about Lily. Her experience sounds therapeutic.
It really does. It was this fascinating physical and energetic response during the blackout, and it speaks volumes, potentially, about the constant background noise we live with when the grid is on.
A reset. How did that manifest for her?
So the moment the electrical systems went dark, Lily reported experiencing this immediate, powerful, spontaneous effect, like being instantly pulled back into the present moment. A total system reboot, she felt.
Physically?
Yes, very physically. She felt a palpable reduction of tension, specifically noting it in her cranial and spinal fluid.
That's incredibly specific. Cranial and spinal fluid tension.
Yeah.
That's linked to stress, right? Neurological agitation.
Exactly. And remarkably, this physical release, this easing of tension, apparently triggered her body to automatically generate serotonin.
Serotonin. A happy chemical.
The very same, the body's natural antidepressant. And the result for her was this profound feeling of happiness, calm, and relaxation, just from the power going out.
Let's just pause on that for a second. If the absence of the grid, the lack of that electrical energy flow, caused such a profound positive physiological response, spontaneous serotonin, reduced cranial pressure, what does that suggest about the normal state, about the electrical energy and frequencies we're constantly bathed in when the power's on?
Well, the strong implication, isn't it, is that the continuous hum of the network, the power lines, the Wi-Fi, all the ambient electromagnetic smog might be actively contributing to a state of chronic low-level physiological stress and neurological tension for many people.
And when the plug was pulled?
The body immediately started to detox, to rebalance. It reverted towards a default state of, well, ease and well-being, like a pressure valve being released.
And Miriam's session provided an insight that connects this physical reset to the metaphysical side of things.
Yes, exactly. Miriam put words to what Lily experienced physically. She realized the blackout had temporarily disabled the entire network of what she called subliminal messages and the constant programming that we're usually subjected to.
Programming? From the grid?
From the whole technological network that runs on it. Miriam likened it to being suddenly disconnected from the radio, a radio that's always playing in the background on a subconscious level, often broadcasting static, fear, agitation.
And without that constant noise.
People immediately started to contact their true inner selves. They stopped obsessing, stopped panicking about the grid being down. Miriam observed people starting to actually communicate with each other face to face, kids playing, people just enjoying the sun, being present.
So the silence of the grid created mental clarity.
Instantaneous internal peace and genuine human connection, yeah. The removal of the external interference allowed the internal signal to come through clearly.
Okay, so this event, the blackout, it feels far too organized, too complex to be just one rogue entity or a simple accident. The diversion of power, the vessel, the fear harvesting. It points towards coordination, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It implies a vast, high-level operation. And the sources are pretty clear. This involved complicity, or at least awareness, at the highest human levels as well.
Governments knew.
Jeremy's session indicated that while maybe not all governments were equally informed, many high-ranking personnel within key nations knew it was going to happen. Not just that it could happen as a risk, but that it was planned.
They knew it was coming. And their reaction.
For some involved, particularly those perhaps aligned with the overall agenda, there was even a sense of satisfaction reported. They saw it as a successful test. Low risk from their perspective to gauge control mechanisms and population response.
And these weren't just low-level insiders, right?
Yeah.
The sessions mentioned actual political figures.
Yes, quite explicitly. High-level human politicians. They were described in some sessions with rather evocative terms like having dark souls or as amas noir, which translates roughly to dark lovers or dark consorts.
Wow. Which countries were implicated?
Key global players: China, the US, France, Spain, Russia. Figures within these nations were perceived as being aware or even actively involved in the planning and execution.
Acting as the terrestrial facilitators,
Yeah.
ensuring the physical and political systems allowed it to happen.
That seems to be the role, the human collaborators who manage the earthly stage for these larger plays. Meanwhile, the core strategic control, the metaphysical command center, seemed to be that vessel we discussed earlier.
The one commanded by humanoids.
Correct. And incredibly, during her session, Clarice apparently managed to make direct contact with the entity perceived as the commander of this specific operation, an entity she identified by the name Hashtar.
Direct contact with the operation commander. What did Hashtar reveal?
This interaction is maybe the most revealing snippet about their overall strategy and timing. Hashtar apparently confirmed their goal was, essentially, total implantation. Full spectrum dominance, you might say.
Implantation of what? Control systems. Beliefs.
It seemed to encompass technological and consciousness control. And he stated, quite bluntly, that they were seeking more power and were deliberately leveraging the current state of global instability.
How so?
He specifically cited the way the human superpowers are currently eating each other's noses, as translation put it. All this geopolitical conflict and division, they see it as the perfect strategic window, the ideal conditions for their agenda.
Using our conflicts against us, a classic tactic.
And a brutally effective one. Hashtar apparently declared it was now or never for their deep infiltration efforts, particularly using AI and related programs.
Now or never. Why the urgency?
The implication is that this period of intense human chaos, distraction, and division provides the cover and the lowered resistance they need. The blackout wasn't just a test, it was a tactical deployment during this perceived window of opportunity. Hashtag TagTag 3.2, the test's true goal, and AI infiltration.
Okay, so the immediate goal was harvesting fear energy, feeding the egregor. But the bigger picture, the strategic objective tied to Hashtar's now or never comment, sounds much more permanent, more sinister.
Absolutely. The fear generation, confirmed by both Jeremy and Clarice, was step one, but the strategic goal was multi-pronged. First, as you say, test the population's reaction to suddenly losing its electrical dependency. How quickly does society fray?
Find the breaking points.
Exactly. And second, maybe more insidiously, use the wave of fear and disorder that follows such an event to push through political decisions. New laws, new surveillance measures, things that would normally face stiff public resistance.
Fear makes people compliant, easier to accept more control.
Precisely. Fear dissolves resistance to authoritarian measures. This was noted by both Jeremy and Nellie, and this leads directly to the ultimate threat revealed in the sessions, the digital control system they aim to implement.
The AI connection. Clarice saw this clearly.
Yes, she perceived the blackout's deeper objective was to install a new, pervasive surveillance infrastructure. She described it as being like a mandatory, inescapable VPN system.
A VPN. Like for internet security.
Sort of, but co-opted.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a system that monitors all data traffic everywhere, constantly, and it's entirely facilitated and driven by artificial intelligence.
And the blackout helped install this. How?
It provided the perfect cover event. That moment of systemic chaos and electronic instability allowed them to implement this deep digital infrastructure, this AI backbone, perhaps without triggering conventional security alarms or public notice.
So the blackout wasn't just about testing the old grid, it was about deploying the new one, a surveillance grid.
That's exactly how it appears. And Anastasia's session corroborated this, describing the specific mechanism of AI infiltration during the outage.
What does she see?
She perceived the blackout facilitating the actual planting of AI programs, describing them as powerful digital viruses, essentially.
Viruses planted during the outage. Where?
Designed to act as background watchers. Embedded deep within critical systems, financial institutions, popular apps, the core architecture of the internet itself. These aren't just tracking cookies. They're described as intrusive, parasitic AI systems seeded during that moment of crisis.
Okay, this is getting really dark. Background watchers, AI viruses. What's the end game? What's the ultimate purpose of embedding this AI everywhere?
The long-term objective, and this is probably the most chilling aspect reported, is to connect people to this new surveillance network at a brain level.
At a brain level, what does that even mean? Robotization or hybridization were terms used, right?
Yes, robotization, as the sources framed it, isn't necessarily about physical robots. It's the gradual erosion of human free will, of authentic emotional responses, replacing them with predictable, algorithmically guided actions and reactions dictated by the AI network.
Becoming puppets of the algorithm.
Yeah, in essence. And hybridization takes it a step further. The actual fusion of human consciousness with these AI programs, integrating individuals directly into the digital control structure. The human brain becomes just another node, an active part of the overarching surveillance and influence system.
My God, so the Blackout.
Yeah.
It was potentially the opening shot in deploying this cognitive control grid.
That's the sobering picture painted by synthesizing these accounts, a critical first step in a long-term plan for AI-driven hybridization and control. Hashtag tag 3.3 future predictions and continued tests.
All right, if Hashtar said now or never, and this 2025 event was seen by some planners as a successful test, the obvious worrying question is, will this happen again? Are more blackouts predicted?
The consensus among the observers who touched on this, Nellie, Christina, Fife, was a definite yes. More events like this are expected.
The same scale. Spain, Portugal again.
Probably not identical. The prediction was more for future events being localized, more tactical, perhaps avoiding another massive simultaneous shutdown across multiple countries to maintain the plausible deniability, the illusion of just sporadic infrastructure failures.
Keep people guessing, keep them off balance.
Yeah.
Where should we be watching? Did the sessions pinpoint any specific regions as likely future targets?
Several locations came up. Jeremy, Anastasia, and Visha all mentioned specific areas. Asia and Africa were cited as regions likely to experience these kinds of disruptions more regularly.
Why there?
Possibly serving as ongoing testbeds, perhaps for resource control tactics or population management methods under those conditions, less global media scrutiny maybe.
And in the West?
In Europe, Italy was specifically mentioned, often targeting high-density tourist sites.
Tourist sites, why? Maximum disruption, panic.
Seems likely. The goal appears to be maximizing the generation of alarm, that fear frequency we talked about, and creating international political pressure and travel chaos. And then there was the U.S.
What about the U.S.?
The sources suggested that if a major event were to hit the U.S., particularly maybe along one of the coasts, the global financial and logistical fallout would be absolutely devastating and likely intentional if it happened.
So, still focusing on electrical grid disruptions? Or are they diversifying their methods?
Diversifying. That came through clearly, especially from Jeremy. The planners are seemingly testing human dependence on all essential services, not just electricity.
Like what?
He predicted future tests could involve strategic disruptions related to, say, natural gas supplies impacting heating and transport, or engineered issues related to food supply chains, creating scarcity, maybe even manufactured hunger crises.
Different pressure points, same goal.
Exactly. The methodology might shift electrical, gas, food, maybe even water, but the overarching strategic goal, as Nellie summarized it, remains chillingly consistent. Continue creating disorder, anxiety, and chaos to maintain and expand control over the collective consciousness.
Okay, if their core strategy relies on creating dependency, chaos, and fear, then the human path to reclaiming sovereignty has to be the exact opposite, right? Independence, stability, conscious awareness.
Precisely. And the sessions were remarkably aligned on what constitutes the most effective resistance. The agreement across the board was crystal clear. Resisting the panic is the single most crucial line of defense.
Don't feed the fear, Acre-Core.
Exactly. The entire entity operation, as described, seems to rely heavily on harvesting that energy and using the resulting chaos. If you consciously choose not to contribute your fear, you're actively disrupting their plan at its root.
And resilience isn't just about hunkering down alone, is it? Jeremy mentioned community.
Yes, that was important. He emphasized that true resilience involves self-sufficiency, absolutely reducing reliance on fragile, centralized systems, whether it's power, food, or information. But just as importantly, it involves actively building mutual aid networks.
Communities supporting each other?
Right. These local networks directly counteract the forced isolation and panic. They ensure local survival, support, and shared problem solving. And critically, underpinning all of this, resilience requires maintaining a state of sobriety, mental and emotional clarity, and a consciousness that is deliberately not driven by fear.
Keeping your head when all about you are losing theirs, essentially.
That's a good way to put it. Nellie and Clarisse synthesized this further. They explain that the real power lies in maintaining your internal sovereignty, your energetic independence, preventing that vibration of fear from taking root and spreading from your personal energetic space.
Which brings us back to Linda, doesn't it? Her story seems to be the ultimate proof of this principle.
It really does. If your inner frequency, your internal state, is high enough, stable enough, the external crisis, no matter how severe, simply doesn't gain the same traction. It becomes almost irrelevant to your direct experience.
So the greatest protective measure isn't a generator or stored food necessarily, but internal energetic work, establishing that secure personal boundary.
That's the profound implication. Making your own energetic field so robust, so anchored in a higher frequency, that the low-frequency signals of the crisis literally cannot penetrate. You simply don't resonate with the intended negative effect. Hashtag 4.2, the antivirus solution. Now, beyond just protecting yourself, Clarisse's session highlighted something more proactive. Almost like an energetic counteroffensive against the AI and the manipulation programs they're trying to install.
A counterattack. Tell us about this antivirus idea. That sounds intriguing.
She stressed that simply, say, running off-grid or moving to the countryside isn't a complete solution in itself, because the energetic influences, the networks, they're pervasive, they travel. The new AI network is intended to be global.
Okay, so hiding isn't enough. What's the alternative?
Instead, she argued, humans need to use their greatest inherent tool, which is conscious, focused intention and creation, to actively create programs to counter that.
Create programs?
Yeah.
Like software?
Yeah.
Or energetic construct?
More like energetic and consciousness-based constructs,
Right.
actively building an energetic and maybe even a parallel technological antivirus, something designed specifically to dismantle, disrupt, or neutralize the AI control programs and the fear frequencies the entities are implanting.
So not just passive defense, but autonomous offensive creation. Using our own consciousness creatively.
Precisely. It's about meeting their systems with our own consciously created systems based on sovereignty, freedom, and higher frequencies. Lily and Carmela also touched on this, noting that collective non-co-creation is key.
Non-co-creation, meaning refusing to play their game.
Exactly. The conscious, shared refusal to feed the fear egregore, to participate in the panic, to buy into the narratives of division and scarcity, that is the most profoundly disruptive force to the entity's grand plan.
Cut off the fuel supply.
Cut off the fuel supply of fear, yes. And simultaneously begin creating and amplifying counter-programs based on conscious connection, joy, sovereignty, mutual support. If you do that collectively, the infrastructure of control they're building simply cannot be sustained. It starves.
Okay, so to try and synthesize this core knowledge for you, the listener, maybe the essential takeaway from this whole deep dive is that stark contrast. The clear distinction between the planned reaction they intended, which was panic, dependency, division, fear, and the actual human potential that spontaneously emerged for the moment that external radio, that constant stream of technological and subliminal programming was temporarily switched off.
Yes. That potential for joy, for clarity, for deep self-connection, for instantaneous physiological balance and well-being, it was right there waiting to surface.
The contract really couldn't be clearer, could it? The Blackout was designed, it seems, to showcase human weakness and dependence. But for those who maintained internal stability or who were reset by the silence.
It revealed immediate strength, creativity, resilience, and that instantaneous energetic rebalancing. It proved in a way that our internal state is the ultimate determining factor, not the external circumstances.
Which leaves us, I think, with a really provocative final thought to chew on. If just a single day of the electricity being off can trigger such a profound physiological and mental reset in someone like Lily, spontaneously generating serotonin, relieving deep-seated tension, then what exactly are the unseen, maybe negative frequencies and influences constantly operating in the background when the lights are on, when the network is fully active?
It's a huge question.
And more importantly, how can we, using these principles of resonance, internal sovereignty, maybe conscious non-co-creation, how can we actively cultivate and create that same spontaneous reset experience, that clarity and balance for ourselves every single day, without needing a continental power grid failure to shock us into it?
That really is the question, isn't it? It defines what true freedom might actually look like in this modern hyper-connected age.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time as we continue to explore the unseen realities that are shaping our world.